to introduce Cherie. And I will say that I met Cherie a year ago, and we've communicated and spoken, and in this week, as she stayed here, I've gotten even more deeply to appreciate her wisdom and where one can go, even with cancer, and maybe even because of cancer. So, Cherie, thank you for traveling to Texas, from Texas to be with us here.
Thank you.
That's a gift that you've given all of us.
Thank you. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here. Welcome. My name is Cherie Rineker, and one of the things that always brings me so much strength every day is a picture that I found a while ago on Facebook, and I actually printed it out and framed it in my house. And it's a little baby bird telling its mom that it's afraid and saying, "What if I fall?" And then the mommy says, "But darling, what if you fly?" And so I kind of view my life in that way anymore. Cancer has kind of made me fearless in a sense. Standing in front of people and talking was my absolute worst fear for a very long time. I skipped speech class twice in college, ended up finally taking it in the summer because I literally got physically sick having to stand in front of my students, about 6 other classmates, and giving a 3-minute presentation. So that's where I was at prior to cancer, and never in a million years did I think I was going to stand in front of people and want to share my story. But the feedback that I've gotten from my book has really made it feel necessary for me to go around and talking to people, because there's so many people that live life without hope, and they just need somebody. And it seems to be me, who has cancer, is on chemo, and not just living with it, but thriving with it. So that's where I'll just start off talking. And because I'm not good at this, I write a lot down. And basically, that's where I'll take it from here. And I would love to thank Ren. Ren and Cedar were the 2 people that I stayed with last year while I was here for my 2nd month. And today he took me over to the house of Laura, and we did a healing session. He did a healing session with me, and I felt like I was surrounded by divine energy that flowed through the air, through the prayers that were given out, and all the people surrounding me were asking for complete healing. And I felt blessed and honored to receive it. And though my faith is not attached to any denomination, I believe in the power of intention. And I think that when we're open to receive, the universe is there to give. So no matter what happened today, I mean, I feel something powerful happened. And I just want to thank you again for inviting me to the group and letting me feel that today. Thank you. When I first came to Colorado, I was staying at a less than optimal place, to put it mildly. Neshama and Cedar literally rescued me. Chapter 13, going to give cannabis a try. My trip to Colorado goes into great detail, and it's a real page turner. It explains the less than optimal circumstances, quite scary actually, that I had to put up with. Looking back, I still think I was a little bit crazy to do all I did. But when I was desperately trying to find quality and quantity of life, so I could hang around with my little girl as long as I could, I was willing to try anything. The reason I ended up in Colorado was because I was diagnosed 4 years ago with multiple myeloma, a cancer of the blood, which to this day is incurable. Prior to my diagnosis, I lived a very healthy lifestyle. I was actually hired as a spa supervisor, colon hydrotherapist, and massage therapist at a world-renowned spa, where people came from all over the world to be cured from diabetes through a rigorous 3-week raw food regimen where you had to fast for the first week. In order to work there, we had to live a vegan lifestyle, raw, 80% of which was raw. Before I was hired, I told them I was a vegetarian, but I was open to try the vegan lifestyle. Though I loved it, and I loved the way it tasted, and loved the way I felt, I lost too much weight in the first week and realized that I needed dairy and eggs to be part of my diet. While there, I started to have bone pain, which resulted in a couple of fractured ribs. I did not go to a doctor, but I started to see an acupuncturist. She treated me for a couple of months, and though I felt emotionally and spiritually better than I had my entire life, physically I sensed something was definitely off. I still took 6 more months of many doctor visits and misdiagnoses before I was finally told on November 3rd, 2012, that I had 4 fractures and 3 tumors on my spine, one of which almost paralyzed me and put me in a wheelchair. I had several broken ribs and a cancer that had made me so anemic that I was barely able to make it up the stairs to make it to my apartment. When more than 2 years later, many chemo treatments, radiation, and 2 stem cell transplants, the myeloma was still not kicked out of my system, I started looking at cannabis. This landed me on the front page of our local newspaper because I had to leave my husband and my daughter behind in order to try cannabis, which is still very much illegal in the state of Texas. As conservative as the place I live is, I did not meet one person who did not agree with the legalization of medical marijuana, and I have been an advocate and an activist ever since. I would now like to read you a little part from my book, chapter 14, Climbing to the Top of the Mountain. This actually refers to the trail that's right across the street by Wonderland Lake, and is the place where the idea of my book was conceived, now almost a year ago. When I talk about we, I'm talking about my little dog Coco and I, who was my companion on my trip. We got to a turnoff that would either take us around the lake, beautiful and familiar since I had done it several times, or a skinny trail that would wind me ever higher and steeper to the top. I hesitated. I had not brought water, my bones were frail, I had not brought my phone. Even though I heard my husband's voice of concern in the back of my mind, I brushed it off and decided to take on the challenge. With every step I took, I felt exhilaration, like I was overcoming something, like I was growing in spirit, as I had so many times on this journey we call life. I felt I had to keep going, to laugh cancer in its face, to show who was boss. I started talking to my body. I was telling her how strong she was, how every step up and forward made my muscles and bones stronger, closing the holes cancer had caused. I felt my lungs expand, my blood rejuvenate, my heart pump in a way I'd forgotten it could from when I was a triathlete. With my inner eye, I saw my body find its balance, pushing the myeloma out of my bone marrow, sweating it out for the wind to carry off. I felt myself getting stronger, not just physically, but mentally. The kind of toughness that comes from not giving up, not letting go, persevering, going against the odds, not taking no for an answer. There was a nice man ahead of me with a very big backpack. I slowly caught up with him. He was a bit overweight and struggling. I asked if he was using the backpack as extra exercise. He smiled and pointed to the top of the mountain. No, he said, I come here to hang glide. It's beautiful coming down, and I use the climb as my exercise. It is hard, but it is well worth it. He was clearly out of breath, and so was I. We stood and chatted for a while, then I took off again. After about a 100-yard climb, feeling my heart in my throat, I saw a big rock I could sit on and decided to take another break. Coco was clearly not into this climb, and I mostly had to carry her. When we got to the rock, we sat down and admired the incredible view below. I saw another lake in the distance and some hills around. Although it was November, it was still very green and lush. A man came down the path and I asked him if we were about halfway up, and he said not quite yet. I started to doubt if this was such a good idea. I began to think that maybe this was not such a wise and healthy decision. At that time, the man with the backpack had caught up with me again. I told him about my diagnosis and that I wanted to go to the top of the mountain as a challenge in beating this thing inside of me, but I wasn't sure I could. He told me I should do it for sure then, that I should not let the cancer keep me from doing this amazing trail. Seeing how much he was struggling, I knew I needed to do it as well. Fear started creeping in, as it sometimes can when we push the envelope. I'd physically overdone it before in my life, not always with the greatest of consequences. One time, I had done a 6-mile run after flying back from Europe with a temperature around freezing, and I had ended up with the flu because my lungs were not accustomed to breathing in such cold air while running off at full tilt. Another time, during a Las Vegas layover, I had gone hiking in 100-degree heat with a hangover and no more than a bottle of water. I had stopped sweating and my heartbeat would not come down. I've had heat stroke twice from overdoing it. Yes, I've not always been the smartest when it comes to things like this, but I can say I've lived life to the fullest. I felt this fear was the cancer talking, trying to persuade me that I was no longer strong enough, that it was stronger than I. I thought back about all that I had survived and conquered. Lots of chemo, radiation, 2 stem cell transplants, deep depression, and I started to laugh in cancer's face. I was laughing at fear itself. I thought of my favorite show, Naked and Afraid, a show in which 2 strangers, a man and a woman, are dumped in the middle of nowhere in very tough conditions like deserts, mountains, and uninhabitable islands with only 1 tool each to get them through 21 days together. My daughter and I liked watching that show, and just the thought of walking through the desert without shoes, forget bra and panties, I want shoes, is enough for me to say no thank you. I wonder if these people could take on the stem cell transplant I had taken on, not once, but twice in 4 months. And I reminded myself that I too was a survivor, and a strong one at that, both mentally and physically. As I was thinking these things, I felt like the myeloma was losing its grip on me. I imagined it lagging behind. I watched its energy leaving my body and dissipate into the air where it could do no harm. The universe has got you, I told myself. You have already won this battle. There were a couple more turns, some wet and slippery patches before Coco and I made it to the top.
It's 7 o'clock.
When we got there, I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I felt overjoyed, at peace. I felt whole. The heck with the tests and numbers. I was healed already. That was last year. And here we are. Did you know that we are born with only 2 fears? The fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. All other fears are taught us. Fear, to me, is never good. Caution and common sense, of course, are. Fear holds us back and is the opposite of love. Hate is merely one of the many ugly faces of fear. Look at a young child. She does not hate. She does not discriminate. A child does not want others to suffer. He does not think ill of others. And so we too can relearn through practice, patience, and persistency, and of course, application, to look at people, to look at life through the eyes of our inner child, to look at life in awe and wonder without concern of what tomorrow may bring. Like anything good and worthwhile in life, this letting go of our fears does not come easy to us. Society, our parents, and life itself have done a really good job beating fear into us. And now it's up to us to let it go. But I promise you, it's so very worth trying. Surrender and let go of your fears and worries. Accept and appreciate your life as it is today. Accepting things the way they are simply means being okay with life as it is today without letting go of your dreams for tomorrow. Just the other day, when my daughter and I were driving to the store, she told me she did not want me to go on this trip. I sensed her anxiety, and I asked her about all the things she was afraid of. She feared me flying. She was worried about whether I was going to be where I was going to be sleeping, and whether I was going to be alone. I saw where this was going, so I decided to share some of my thoughts about fear and worry with her. You know, sweetie, I said, you realize that in life, lots of great and not so great things can happen to us. In order to live your best life ever, it is wisest to assume that you are going to live it to a very ripe old age without accidents, diseases, or heartache. Sure, bad things might still happen, but if you live like tomorrow will be great, you won't live with so much anxiety. What if you get to the age of 80 and none of the things you ever feared happened? Would it not be a shame that you worried about them your whole life? Fear would have held you back from living a really good life. There are two types of people in this world. The optimist, the one who assumes life will be better, the one who thinks her cup is always half full, and the pessimist, the one who's always waiting for the other shoe to drop and who sees his cup as half empty. So I asked my daughter if she'd rather thought the way mommy did or the way daddy did. Daddy is very much a problem solver, and he will find problems where they don't exist. We both had a good laugh, and I think she got the point. Look at my situation as an example. Just because I was told that the cancer that had turned up in my body was incurable, it did not stop me from living life as large as I wanted and doing everything I could to prove the doctors wrong. Nor did it stop me from finishing esthetician school, the program I had joined when my symptoms were relentless, even if it meant writing an essay during the worst part of my treatment and disease, when I could barely sit up or think straight. It did not mean waiting for the end to arrive. No, when I could no longer do massages, I started working at a local health food store, making much less money than I had in the past. And when I could no longer do that, I started writing and turned it in a book, which actually got published, which I never would have thought in a million years would happen. Some may think that if anybody had the right to quit, it was me. But if you quit, you kind of die, even if you don't, if you know what I mean. I was determined to make these weeks, months, now years, and hopefully decades count even more than the first part of my life. I know I'm living on borrowed time. I should be dead, but I'm alive, and I'm going to make the best of the time I have left. There's a couple of pretty slides that I can't show. I might show you at the end. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to what cancer patients kind of deal with when people from the outside are trying to give us generous and well-meaning advice. When someone is diagnosed with something like cancer, people with all kinds of suggestions come out of the woodwork. Everybody wants to help you, and they all know they have the answer. It's all over the internet, right? And the internet is never wrong. Ever seen the French model on that sad State Farm commercial, Bonjour? Oops. There he is. A French model on a State Farm commercial. I would like to share with you a comment I recently received from a friend. Please don't be offended by it. I wasn't. Maybe some of you have had similar thoughts about the sick. I certainly did prior to my diagnosis. It made me stop and think about our belief system, something I have come to refer to as our BS. How desperately we feel we must hold on to our BS in order to feel we have some level of control over our lives and our bodies. Though I am all for believing whatever gets you through your day, when we push our BS onto others, it quickly turns into judgments, which is never healthy to either party. This is what my friend told me. Dear Cherie, stop telling yourself that you have cancer. Instead, declare that you are completely healed, not in the future, but right now. Remember, there are no incurable diseases, only incurable people. Of course, his assumption was that I had not been saying these things for years when in fact I had. In dealing with cancer, I've tried lots and lots of remedies, but it seemed that no amount of vitamin C, D, CoQ10, fish oils, and turmeric was able to bring my numbers down. I took garlic, lots of garlic. It was wonderful for keeping people away, but it did not keep the cancer away. Just the other day, I had a very well-meaning friend tell me I had to cut out all dairy and meat and take a certain supplement. The supplement he took was similar to the one I am taking, and I explained to him that I was diagnosed when I was a vegetarian, and that without my whole organic milk, cheese, and yogurt, I would be at least 15 pounds skinnier and look very sick indeed. When I flew to Denver this past Sunday, I was chatting with a man who was drilling me, the gentleman that we were talking about, who was drilling me on all the things I might be doing wrong. "What are you eating?" he asked. When I told him my cancer had likely started while working at a vegan holistic resort in Arizona, he looked puzzled and instantly went on to the next question. "What were you breathing?" I told him I lived in the mountains in a village with only 800 people, where the air was very clean. He could not understand. I understand why people ask these questions, and I patiently let them. I am the inconvenient truth. They have read that when you live the way I did, you can't possibly get cancer. Hearing that somebody like me got this diagnosis makes people feel uncomfortable and scared. Remember what I said though, it is fear that ruins our happiness, more so even than a cancer diagnosis. Take it from someone who knows. We so desperately want control over our lives, and cancer seems to take that from us. That is, if we let it. Cancer gave me the gift of realizing how precious and wonderful this life is, with all its lessons and perceived challenges. It has given me the chance to prepare for the end, whether it be here tomorrow or in a few decades. I appreciate every day in all its wonder and glory, and don't take much of what happens in the world quite as seriously as I once did. I've noticed how so many people love to feel outraged. Maybe by pointing the finger outward, they feel they do not have to work on what needs attention on the inside. Yet it is only there that we can find peace, love, and happiness. I would be rich if I had gotten $1 for every well-meaning piece of advice I have received over these past 4 years. Here are just some of the things people have recommended. I'm not saying most aren't good advice for a healthy life, but people told me these things insisting they would help me get rid of cancer. This summer, I cleaned out my closets and held a garage sale. I put several of my books out with the rest of my stuff. An older gentleman came by and looked at the books. He asked if I was cured, and I said I was still doing treatments. He then asked me if I had a dog. I said yes. I have a sweet little dog named Coco. Without hesitation, he said, "Get rid of it." I'm not joking. He said it with a straight face, read it in some book. Last thing I knew, pets are actually wonderful to our health. Get rid of your root canals. Get rid of your fillings. Get rid of your teeth. Yes, I have heard them all. I'm not saying that root canals are the best thing to have, but to just go ahead and pull them all in the hopes of seeing the cancer disappear is a leap of faith I'm not willing to take at this moment. I never minded losing my hair. With me, without a smile, I'm just not ready to go there yet. Just stay positive. One of my favorites. Just stay positive. How do you just stay positive when you can't even roll over in bed? When you are permanently stuck with nausea so severe that nothing helps? Sure, I know that being positive is important, but feeling that you must or else is actually very depressing and stressful and makes it much harder to just be positive. Leave it up to the patient to get there. Be there for her. Listen to him. Hold her. But please don't tell them just to be positive. Chemo kills. Thanks. Thanks for reminding me of that as I'm receiving this toxic medicine that helps to keep me alive. Heck, I used to think this myself. I remember meeting a woman who had cancer and was getting chemo. I told her I would never do chemo because chemo kills, right? I don't blame her for walking away from me and having nothing to do with me after that well-meant yet very ignorant statement. Yes, cancer certainly humbled me, and that was not a bad thing. Most of us are very afraid of chemotherapy. I certainly was. The interesting thing was that when I started therapy, it did almost kill me. For the first 2 months, the numbers actually increased, and I felt twice as bad, having to deal with both the cancer symptoms and the chemo symptoms. I specifically remember asking myself this question: Cherie, do you still want to be here? You see, physically, I had all but given up, and I was standing at death's door. Between the pain and the less than optimal home environment, where my husband was emotionally incapable of being there for me, it was just easier to let go. But I had a daughter who had just turned 7 and desperately needed her mommy to be there. I had not had a good relationship with my own mother, and I so much wanted to be there for her. I wanted to raise her in a loving home where she would have a soft place to fall, me, something I had never had. And so, on that day, I made a conscious decision to fight for life, to fight for her. The interesting thing was that the worst of my symptoms started to disappear within a week of making that decision, and the chemo started to bring down my numbers. God never gives us more than we can handle. I love this one. Like God actually handed me cancer. What has God given you lately? Of course, the one that baffled me most was when my mother literally told me, Cherie, stop this nonsense. You don't have cancer. Sure, Mom. As I'm sitting on my bed listening to you on the other side of the phone, my head bald from my second stem cell transplant, I'm surely faking it. I went through all these horrible treatments just to try to get your love and sympathy. And look, even that didn't work. So when my friend told me that there are no incurable diseases, only incurable people, I decided to tell him the conclusions I had come to. My dear friend, cancer feels like having a terrorist in my body, holding a hand grenade with its lever released, ready to explode at any time. What to do about this terrorist is a choice that is always up to me. Oh, how I wish I had somebody smarter than me tell me what to do. My oncologist merely suggests me my treatment options. I know not everybody agrees with my decisions. Having to make these life or death decisions is indeed a heavy load, something I wish I did not have to make. People come with all kinds of suggestions. Though I believe they are well meant, they do not help me much. Please know, I have tried everything out there that is out there and that I could afford. I live as healthy as I can, both physically and spiritually, and I do believe it plays a strong part in my well-being, as does the medicine and the chemo. When you tell me there are no incurable diseases, only incurable people, what do you really mean? You see, I believe cancer helped to cure me from years of emotional suffering due to my parents' abuse. I was cured from a lack of self-worth because I thought that if my parents didn't love me, surely nobody else would. I was cured from a sense of loneliness because I never felt I belonged anywhere. Cancer helped me get out of my comfort zone, and I was able to build deeper friendships than I ever allowed myself before. You see, if I'd been cured from cancer right away, I may not have been cured from these things, nor do I think my voice would have reached as far as it has to be able to help and inspire others who considered giving up, if after just a couple of treatments, the cancer would have gone into complete remission. You know, many of us think we know the answers, and we want things a certain way. What we don't realize is that by wanting things a certain way and forcing things our way, we are missing out on a whole bunch of very valuable lessons. I learned to turn lemons into lemonade, precisely because of my run-in with cancer and other difficult life situations. Today, I realize that the best way to love and embrace life is to accept all things life brings us, to surrender to its toughest teachers. When we stop fighting them and see the silver lining they offer us, they no longer have us paralyzed by fear. Instead, we can appreciate the lessons they teach us. It took a lot of grieving and letting go of old ideas. It meant letting go of my ego, an ego that did not want to admit that which I had previously thought might have been false. And you know what? In going through this process, I found out that this way of letting go doesn't need to stop when dealing with a disease. It also applies to our political views, our parental views, and our ideas about relationships, to name just a few. And this is what I like to call evolution. So this pretty much ends my talk for this evening. I'm happy to take any